Western media all as one are now talking about the second phase of the Ukrainian defense offensive, and everyone who is not lazy has picked up these theses. Although, the second phase of the offensive has been underway since mid-June, and the implication is most likely the third phase, the breakthrough of the main line of defense. But even here miss. To understand what and how it is more correctly called and what is happening in general, a little introductory information. The first phase can and even correctly be considered those actions that began in the first days of June in the Zaporizhia and Donetsk regions and which represented a reconnaissance by combat. Within the framework of these actions, the positions of Russian artillery of the second line of defense were uncovered, warehouses with ammunition, fuel and lubricants and other objects were identified, the main logistic routes were determined, and the analysis of the supply line not only was carried out. In mid-June the process of breaking through the supply line began. In general, this process can be considered the second phase of the offensive, when after the battle reconnaissance, a range of activities to progressively reach the second line of defense was deployed. And at present, this process is not yet complete. Yes, the Ukrainian forces have driven a wedge between Robotino and Verbovo and have indeed reached the main line of the enemy's defense, but this is only in one area, in a certain location. Only after the flanks are equalized, the dominant heights are occupied and the villages playing the role of forward operating base are liberated, the third phase will begin. In fact, we can talk about the preparation of the breakthrough of the second line of defense when you have reached this line not in one section, for example a kilometer long, but when you have created a convenient front for the breakthrough and the appropriate conditions to support this process. For example, control of the same heights. Therefore someone in the West is rushing things very much. Either because of unprofessionalism or out of malice. After all, when the second phase of the offensive is announced, everyone expects something new, and when it does not happen, Russian propaganda immediately turns on with the narrative the offensive has failed. There is no need to rush things, no one promised to liberate Ukraine in 3 days. Everything is going according to plan. Now we can already summarize the results of the second month of the offensive. In July, the Ukrainian side continued to systematically destroy enemy equipment, with an emphasis on artillery and air defense, which are traditionally placed in the second and third lines of defense. And for the third month in a row, the indicators of this work are showing records. In terms of the number of artillery pieces destroyed in July, the Ukrainians fell just a little short of the absolute record and the figure amounted to 677, the second for the entire period of the full-scale invasion. Overall, the pace of Russian artillery removal is bringing the moment of acute compensation crisis closer. The number of destroyed MLRS demonstrated an absolute record. This was also due to the fact that the enemy had to pull MLRS closer to the line of battle because of losses in the artillery, but after a sharp jump in losses, they abandoned this idea. The air defense also showed an absolute record in July, and it is not surprising. Clearing the rear zone of air defense is now no less of a priority than clearing artillery. At the same time, compensation of air defense is a problematic process, and the loss of each unit, in the current conditions, is conditionally irretrievable. Thus 3 months of increased load on compensation processes within the framework of record destruction of equipment, as well as growing logistical problems, lead to a progressive loss of combat effectiveness of Russian troops on certain bridgeheads. And we continue to watch and think, where will the first line break?